Welcome to Anime Recaps. In this video, we will explain the story of Seiri Gensouki, Spirit Chronicles. This anime tells a story of a man who reincarnated into a different world. He lives as an orphan in his new world, and his last memories are not fully recovered. Realizing that he has magical powers within him, he intends to avenge the death of his mother, who died in that world. How is his adventure in this new life? Let's find out in the story of Seiri Gensouki, Spirit Chronicles. The story of Seiri Gensouki Spirit Chronicles begins by showing a boy named Haruto Amakawa bidding farewell to a girl. Apparently, on that day, Haruto moved and left the girl, who was his childhood friend. She was seen crying, and he tried to comfort her by promising to meet her in the future so they could be together. Time goes by, and in the future, when Haruto is growing up, he sees the girl who was his childhood friend with another boy. Haruto went home by bus, which unexpectedly had an accident so that he died. At the time of the accident, 2 other girls were killed. The scene moves to the Bertram Kingdom in 1991, where there is a boy who suddenly wakes up from his sleep. This boy's appearance was shabby, and he kept having strange memories mixed with Haruto's memories. The boy with black hair is named Ryo. When Ryo had woken up, several grown men came who told him to take a shower. While taking a bath, Ryo kept thinking of his mother, who had promised to take him to his hometown. But the promise was never fulfilled because his mother was killed not long after. After taking a bath, several girls wearing white robes suddenly approached Ryo to ask about a missing girl. Ryo said he didn't know anything about it, and suddenly one of the girls, named Celia Claire, released magic power to detect magic in the village, but she didn't find any other magic apart from them. Before leaving, she gave him a bag of money in return for questioning him. Ryo quickly hid the money bag inside his shirt and rushed home. When opening the house door, he was surprised by the presence of a man who immediately stabbed a sword into his chest. Luckily, the man's stab hit Ryo's money bag hidden under his shirt, so Ryo wasn't hurt. The mysterious man was still trying to attack until finally, a spirit in the figure of a woman appeared to awaken the magic in Ryo's body. Ryo then resisted the attack from the man using the magic power he suddenly got and the martial skills he had because of Haruto's memories. Although the battle was quite difficult, he managed to subdue the mysterious man. Then Ryo's attention was drawn to a bag belonging to the mysterious man who kept moving. Ryo opened the bag, which contained a beautiful young girl with blue hair. The girl was Flora Bertram, the one Celia and the girls had been looking for earlier. As soon as Ryo freed her, she fell unconscious, so he carried her to bring her back to the kingdom. But outside the house, Celia and several women had already come and saw Ryo carrying Flora. Apparently, one of the women was Flora's sister, Christina Bertram, who misunderstood Ryo and immediately slapped him. Christina thought that he was the one who kidnapped her sister, and she threatened him to come to the kingdom. In the kingdom, a commander-in-chief named Charles Arbor interrogated and beat Ryo. He forced Ryo to admit he had kidnapped Flora. Meanwhile, Flora finally came to her senses in her room and immediately asked Celia and a female bodyguard to call Ryo. They rushed to the interrogation room and were shocked to see Ryo's battered state. After Flora explained Ryo's innocence, Celia healed Ryo's wounds and took him to the room. Sometime later, Ryo came to his senses, and Celia told him that the king of Bertram Kingdom would later express his gratitude directly. Ryo was quite surprised, but he finally asked Celia to teach him manners to meet the king. Long story short, the king thanked Ryo, and in return, he gave a full scholarship so that Ryo could study at the Bertram Kingdom Royal Institute. It was revealed that Celia was actually 12 years old but was already a teacher at the Bertram Kingdom Royal Institute. On the first day of school at the Bertram Kingdom Royal Institute, the other students looked down on Ryo because he was an orphan and not from a noble family. But Celia protects Ryo and even offers to give additional lessons to him after school because he misses lessons a lot. When he came home from school, Ryo came to Celia's room, and Celia taught him various lessons. He quickly understood the lesson because of Haruto's memories. Haruto's memories helped Ryo when he learned the sword the next day. The teacher praised Ryo's sword skills, even though Ryo's fighting style was different from what he was used to teaching. Not only that, but he called Ryo a potential knight, which he rejected. Ryo is increasingly studying hard after school on the final exam day with Celia, so that after the exam was over, Ryo's score was the highest in the class, and so did Christina's. However, this achievement earned the envy of 2 other male students who accused Ryo of cheating. Hearing that, Celia defended Ryo and made sure he wasn't cheating. After having tea together in her room, Celia expressed her fear about the other students who would dislike Ryo even more. He calmed her down and said he would be fine because she was beside him. The scene changes. When the teacher selects students to participate in the night tournament, the teacher chose Ryo to participate, making other students express disapproval because he was just an orphan. Moreover, they insulted Ryo, who couldn't use magic. But the teacher's decision was unanimous, and Ryo faced Charles in the first round of the tournament. Charles apparently has a grudge against Ryo, which he considers the cause of his demotion for 5 years. The match ended in victory for Ryo after he slashed Charles' wooden sword towards his neck. After the tournament, the students are practicing at school and will go through the forest with a predetermined route. 2 male students who previously accused Ryo of cheating made the route. They went along the route and managed to defeat a group of monsters. But at the end of the route, they did not find the destination as shown on the map. Instead, in front of them, there was only a ravine. It was then that another group of monsters suddenly came to attack. They were together trying to defeat the monster, but to no avail. One of the male students was finally injured and accidentally pushed Flora until she was about to fall into a ravine. Ryo, who saw this, swiftly saved the princess, but unfortunately he fell to the ravine. When the other friends saw Ryo fall, they accused him of pushing Flora. Meanwhile, Ryo, who managed to save himself, chose to hide after hearing the accusations of his classmates. Unfortunately, at that moment, a bigger monster came to attack them. Even the classmates tried to fight back, but they ran backward, leaving Flora alone in the end. Ryo was finally forced to come out of hiding to once again save Flora. He managed to defeat the monster after slashing its hand and heads. In the distance, a mysterious man who had apparently sent monsters to attack them noticed Ryo. At school, the head of Bertram Kingdom Royal Institute blamed Ryo for the incident that threatened Princess Flora's safety. He confirmed that Ryo had disappeared, making Celia worried about his condition. Fortunately, not long after, Ryo managed to sneak into Celia's room, who was immediately greeted with a warm hug by the teacher. When he sat down to talk, Ryo asked for permission to leave the kingdom to go to his mother's hometown. He promised to send news by letter to Celia using the pseudonym Haruto. Ryo travels until he arrives in a city, where he meets a girl named Lode. Here, he bought food supplies and sent a letter to Celia. Ryo continued his journey until he found a young girl who had fainted in the middle of the forest. When he saved her, the young beastkin girl actually fired poison at him. Fortunately, Ryo managed to neutralize the poison with the magic he had. The fight between the two ensued, and Ryo managed to restrain the girl's body. That's when he saw that she was imprisoned with slavery magic. The flashback scene shows one of Ryo's classmates casting slavery magic on the girl and telling her to kill Ryo. Back in time, Ryo managed to free the girl from slavery magic. While crying, she introduced herself as Latifa. He asked her to go to a region where humans and beastkins could coexist. However, Latifa did not obey Ryo's words and instead chose to follow him. Ryo initially refused because he didn't trust her, to the point that she begged him to cast slavery magic on her. In the end, Ryo was melted, and they continued their journey together. After walking for a while, Ryo and Latifa set up a tent for the night. Ryo cooked the food he had previously bought in the city. Interestingly, Latifa apparently recognized the dish and called it spaghetti. Not only that, but before going to bed, she admitted that she missed Tokyo. Latifa's words made Ryo realize that she was actually a reincarnated figure from the earth, just like himself. The next day their journey continues into a forest. While returning to spend the night in the woods, a group of beastkin of the Forest of Spirits attacked Ryo. He tried to explain that he wasn't an enemy, but Forest of Spirits' anger grew when they saw Latifa inside the tent. They thought Ryo had kidnapped an easy beastkin and immediately attacked him until he fainted. Then they brought him back to the village. While he was unconscious, Ryo dreamed of meeting the woman's spirit who once saved and awakened the magic power within him. In his dream, Ryo saw Haruto's childhood friend. When he woke up, Ryo was in a room in the Forest of Spirits village. Not long after, Latifa came and immediately hugged him. She said how she was worried about Ryo, who was unconscious. The Forest of Spirits group realized that they had wrongly accused Ryo and apologized. The next day, the Forest of Spirits invited Ryo to meet the village head. On the way to the village head's office, Ryo asked about the big tree as if only he could see it. One accompanying beastkin explained that the tree was the home of the spirit of the giant tree, Dryad. The tree was surrounded by magic power, and indeed not everyone could see it. Arriving at the village head's office, Ryo was greeted by the higher-ups of the Forest of Spirits village, who apologized for the misunderstanding. They were grateful that he had freed Latifa from slavery magic. For that, the village chiefs decided to grant Ryo's request. Ryo initially refused, but he finally asked them to take care of Latifa because he couldn't take her along on the trip. In addition, he asked for permission to stay temporarily in the village and learn the Forest of Spirits magic. After getting the approval of the village chiefs, Ryo was surprised by the presence of Dryad, who suddenly said inside Ryo's body that there was a spirit that had not yet awakened. He explained that the spirit was in human form, which was rare. Long story short, Ryo lives in a house in the village with Latifa and 3 female beastkins, Sara, Alma, and Ufia, who will help them. On the other hand, the mysterious man, who had previously noticed Ryo, was secretly stealing a monster's egg with his student. When a festival took place in the village, Ryo took Latifa to the forest to tell her his plan to go alone and leave her in the village. She rejected the plan and insisted on staying with him, but he insisted on leaving her. At the same time, the mysterious man asked his student to bring 1 monster egg to lure more monsters out, so that later he can take all their eggs. In the village, the beastkins noticed a monster approaching. They flocked to the forest and found the mysterious man's student who was carrying a monster egg. The fight began, but the student died because of the mysterious man's actions. Meanwhile, the monster attacks were getting closer and closer until one of them attacked Latifa, who was walking alone in the forest. Alma and Sara try to help her, but their abilities don't match those of the monsters. When they were about to lose, Ryo came to save Latifa and managed to defeat the monster. The next day, Latifa apologized for troubling Ryo. Instead, he said that she was not a bother and had already considered her as a sister. Then Ryo revealed the reason for leaving was because he had promised his late mother to come to his hometown. Meanwhile, Latifa revealed about herself, who lived in Japan and is currently reincarnated in her previous life. When asking permission to leave from the village head, Ryo was given a sword and a lot of food supplies. To make it easier to carry it all, one of the village heads provided a storage area that had been bewitched to penetrate space and time. Ryo continued his journey until 2 weeks later, he arrived at Yagumo. In the village, he met 2 girls named Ruri and Sayo. When he asked to meet the village head, Ruri said that Yuba, the village head, was her grandmother. When Yuba greeted him, Ryo asked about his parents, Zen and Ayame. After Yuba asks Ryo to tell her about his parents, she reveals that she knows them both because Zen is her son. Ryo was relieved to have arrived at the right village. Then he revealed his intention to come to the village to make graves for his parents. Apparently, the graves for Ryo's parents had already been made, so Yuba invited Ryo to visit the tomb. After praying at the tomb, he asked Yuba's permission to stay temporarily in the village. Ryo begins life in the village and has 2 new friends, Shin and Dola. Unexpectedly, the son of the village head next door named Gon came to interfere. He apparently stopped at Igumo because the cart he would take to the capital was broken. But Gon's arrival doesn't end well because he fights and almost strangles Shin. Luckily just then, Ryo and Yuba came. Yuba gives Gon and his friend permission to stay temporarily in the village. At night, Gon sneaks into Ruri and Sayo's room secretly. Luckily, before going to sleep, Ryo gave the 2 girls a red crystal so that he would be able to immediately save them in case of danger. He rushed to come and save Ruri, who was almost taken captive by Gon. Ryo's anger peaked when he remembered his mother's death, which made him beat Gon so hard that he almost killed him. Fortunately, Ryo's actions can still be stopped, and the next day, Ryo apologizes to Yuba and the villagers for causing a ruckus. Yuba asks Hayate, a young man guarding the village, to take Gon to prison the next day. She then left a letter for Hayate's father, Goki. Long story short, Goki immediately came to Ryo after reading the letter. Goki explained that he used to be the servant of Ryo's mother, Ayame. He reveals that Ayame was once the princess of the Karasuki Kingdom. He tells that Zen was Ayame's bodyguard, until finally, a prince from another kingdom liked Ayame and intended to kidnap her. Zen managed to save her and kill the prince's men. The prince felt revenge and asked to marry Ayame if the 2 kingdoms wanted to be in a truce. King Karasuki disapproved of that, so he ordered Zen and Ayame to run away. Then Goki invites Ryo to come to the kingdom to meet the king and queen Karasuki. In front of them, Ryo told about Zen and Ayame. At the time, Lucius, the man who had previously been Zen's comrade in arms, killed Ayame in front of Ryo. He revealed his intention to avenge his mother's death to Lucius. Hearing this intention, King Karasuki asked Ryo to practice competing with Goki. The king wanted to gauge Ryo's abilities before he could take revenge. The battle with Goki ensued. Even though Goki had taken the lead after casting magic power, Ryo still managed to hold it until he finally subdued him. Goki gave up and acknowledged Ryo's greatness. Then, Ryo returned to his parents' grave and promised to avenge them. After some time, Ryo asks permission to leave the village for Yuba and Ruri. He apparently intends to return to the Forest of Spirits and meet the village chiefs. Ryo went to the village head and asked him to build a house that he could take with him. The village head complied with Ryo's request, and long story short, Ryo woke up and was surprised to see a female spirit sleeping beside him. The spirit was the figure that had been inside him all this time, and apparently, she was bound to him. When Ryo found out that the spirit didn't have a name, he finally gave it the name Aishia. Ryo brought Aishia to meet the village heads and the dryads. Dryad asks what magic element Aishia has, and she says she can master all magic elements. This surprised the village heads, including Dryad, because no spirit could master all the elements. To prove it, they asked Ryo and Aishia to fight. The battle was fierce, and Aishia really could imitate all the magic elements released by Ryo. Dryad finally stopped the fight and trusted Aishia's abilities. He then promised to teach everything about the spirit to Aishia, who was losing her memory. Ryo intended to leave the Forest of Spirit village soon. But earlier, when taking a bath, Latifa approached Ryo and told him that she was the girl who died with Haruto on the bus in her previous life. The next day, Ryo asks permission again to leave the village. The village head gave him a tool to teleport back to the Forest of Spirit village. In addition, it provides a tool so that Ryo can change the color of his hair and disguise back to the Bertram Kingdom. Arriving at Clea, the capital of the Bertram Kingdom, Ryo was surprised to see a busier atmosphere than before. He rushed to the Bertram Kingdom Royal Institute to look for Celia. But when he managed to enter, Ryo did not find her. Instead, he meets a man who informs him that Celia is currently in the kingdom to prepare for the wedding with Charles Arter. The man explained that the Bertram Kingdom fell after losing the war. They almost lost the entire kingdom, but the Arter family managed to negotiate. But for that, they asked for a political marriage between Charles and Celia. Ryo insisted on meeting Celia and asked Aishia for help sneaking into Celia's room. Arriving in the room, Celia immediately hugged Ryo, and he asked if she wanted the marriage. Unexpectedly, Celia replied that she did want to marry Charles and ordered Ryo not to come to the wedding. Celia's words apparently did not satisfy Ryo, and he was determined to disrupt his marriage. The next day before the wedding ceremony, Charles called Celia to introduce her to his 6 other wives. Celia looks surprised, and at that moment, Christina comes to talk to her. She apologizes that Celia had to marry Charles for the kingdom's sake. Before the ceremony took place, Celia and Charles carried out a procession along the royal streets. Aishia used telepathy to talk to Celia and asked her to see Ryo among the crowd of citizens watching the procession. When Celia saw Ryo, Celia's heart broke, and she burst into tears. This apparently confirmed Ryo's intention to interfere with the wedding, and he attacked inside while the ceremony was in progress. Ryo attacked all the guards until he managed to capture Celia after hitting Charles to the ground. Ryo used telepathy to communicate with Celia when he was about to take her away. He asks if she wants to run away with him because he doesn't want to regret once again leaving her. Celia agreed to Ryo's invitation, and without a second thought, Ryo carried her to take her away from the wedding ceremony. The fight doesn't stop there. The bodyguards continued to attack Ryo even though they managed to withstand him. Finally, a mysterious man who previously kept an eye on Ryo, Race, attacked him. Ryo again managed to dodge Race's attack even though the battle became fiercer when Alfred Amal, the strongest knight in the kingdom, attacked him. Alfred used a sword move that left Ryo with no other choice but to quickly run away. Ryo escaped to a place where he had previously asked Aishia to save Celia. Seeing Ryo return safely, Celia hugged him, relieved to be back together. But at that moment, in the sky appeared many strange pillars of light. Celia and Ryo stared at the pillar cluelessly, but Aishia seemed to know something and hurriedly pleaded with Ryo to save someone. The scene shifts to a meadow where 3 children are being kidnapped by a group of men. The children seem to have come from Earth because Ryo found a cell phone that helps him find their whereabouts. After arriving at a heavily guarded hut, Ryo heard a familiar Japanese voice. Without thinking any longer, he beat the group of men and freed the children who were being kidnapped. It was then that Ryo realized that one of the 3 children was his childhood friend, Ayase Miharu. The anime series Seiri Gensouki Spirit Chronicles ends with the scene when Ryo helps to free Ayase. The moral that can be learned from this anime is not to look down on a homeless orphan, because who knows, there is a great secret power within him.